Hello and welcome to or welcome back to my channel. My name is Marin and here you will find a little beauty, a little books, and a little teaching content. So if that sounds like something you might enjoy, I would love for you to subscribe and stick around and join me in my little corner of YouTube. Today's video is going to be my reflection on the 2023-24 school year. So let's go ahead and get into it. So I did use a few different reflection forms that I found as freebies on Teachers Pay Teachers. So I will link all three of those down below in case you would also like to use them. They are free, as I mentioned, so bonus there. But basically I used those three forms just to kind of organize my thoughts and give this video a little bit of structure, and then I created an outline right here. So I have just some bullet points. We're gonna go through them. I have sectioned them into three big wins: the good, the bad, the ugly. Next year I will, and then I will go over what my number one goal for next year will be as well. So let's dive on in. So I'm gonna go ahead and start off by talking about my three big wins from this school year. So the first one is that I managed to learn 400 plus new names and got to know 400 plus new students, which was very exciting. This was one of my teacher goals for this past school year. I did a whole teacher goal series, so I will link the first one up above if you would like to go back and see what my initial goals were. But I'm very happy that I got to know all of the students and we had a lot of fun. My second big win is that the school made record profits from our Scholastic book fairs, both the fall one and the spring one, which was very impressive because I felt like they were scheduled at very odd times. And while the spring one had like some kind of event attached to it, the fall one did not. So I was very pleased that we were able to turn a record amount of profit. This meant I was able to use my Scholastic dollars to bring some new things into the library for next year, which I'm excited to show you all about when I start my vlogs for next school year. And my third big win was that I settled into a new school and a new position. And by the end of it, I really felt like I'd found my way and felt at home, which is a personal success. It's very nerve-wracking to move schools, and I was helped out a bit by knowing a few people in this building already, but I still feel like I was able to get to know all of the staff, as I mentioned, all of the students, and I really felt like I belonged by the end of the year, which made my heart very happy. All right, now let's turn our attention to the good of this past school year. So one of the things that kind of sticks in my mind the most is an activity that I did before winter break with the gingerbread man, where the students used materials to construct a bridge to help the gingerbread man cross the river so that it did not have to ride on the fox and get eaten. So I'm gonna flash some pictures right here just next to me. I'll scoot over so you can kind of see some of their creations. They were really cute. The kids had a really good time. Working together is very hard for them, so this took some patience, but in the end, I think they had a great time and I was really pleased with what they were able to come up with. The second good was watching the students have genuine, real emotion when I was reading a story. So some of the books evoked very surprising reactions, and it was just really fun to see their joy and their excitement and the way they would laugh at the parts that were meant to be funny. And it was just a lot of fun to spend most of my time reading books to them rather than worrying about a lot of the academic stuff. The next good thing is that I finally finished processing all of the books that had been left over from the previous librarian. So I had an enormous stack of books that was left to me, and I was able to get through all of them, get them in the system, and get them on the shelves, which was a huge accomplishment. So that is another good from this year. It means I get to start this coming school year with a clean slate and only what I have purchased, because there is an order of books that probably has been delivered now, but it's only like 10 or so titles, and I'll be able to knock those out really quickly. And the final good is that I was able to rearrange the library space into something that worked for me. So I will film an updated library tour at some point next year so you can see what the space is looking like. There are obviously still some things I want to do, but overall the physical space is now set up the way I want it to be, so that makes me very happy. All right, now let's talk about the bad, because there is always bad things from the school year. The first is the sheer incessant amount of talking from some of the students slash classes. Oh my goodness. Some of these classes just talked constantly. And this has been a problem my last couple years in the gen ed class as well, rather than a special area class. But man, when you only have 55 minutes a week with the students and they are talking the amount of talking that they do, it is really hard to get through lessons. And there was nothing that any of us could do to help that. The classroom teachers complained about it, the other specialists complained about it. It was an epidemic with some of these classes. I don't know. I have really noticed an uptick in the sheer amount of conversation the students are having since COVID. I mean, there's no other way to put it. I feel like that is one of the big things that changed. I do have a professional development book on my shelf, which is supposed to do with like talkative classes. I might see if I can find time to read that this summer to see if that gives me some tips or tricks, because wow, the talking, definitely one of the bad things. Another bad thing, and this is like a administration bad thing, not upper admin, but school admin. There were way too many cooks in the kitchen in this building, y'all. I have never been in a building where we had so many different people scheduling events with like no centralized system. I felt like there were multiple spirit things going on at the same time, multiple activities, assemblies, special guests, and I felt like the communication was severely lacking. I never knew what was going on in like the general school thing. As a specialist, you are kind of isolated from a lot of what gets sent out because you're not getting like those student notes and things to pass out, and they kind of forget that you also need to know what's going on. So there were like, I think an entire month, I can't remember what month it was, March or April, where they did like a spirit activity every day, and I never knew what was going on because no calendar was sent out, and it was just kind of a big giant mess. I feel like this school could really benefit from having one person deciding the activities and then making sure that things are shared out with all of the staff. Coming from a building previously where the principal was very diligent about sending out almost daily emails with what was happening, this was very chaotic for me, and I had a very hard time adjusting. And another bad is that I was very unprepared for the amount of students who were sent to the library as like a buddy room. This is not something that really happened at my previous building. Now, classroom teachers would send students with like work or whatever. I definitely sent some students out who needed a break from my classroom or the students in my classroom in some cases. So it's not that I wasn't expecting some, but there were literally days where I would get somebody sent to me every single class period. It was very strange. So next year, I'll talk about this in a minute, but I need to be better about having a spot for them to sit and something for them to do, especially if they get put out from music or PE, because they don't have like pencil paper tasks that they can bring with them. Art's a little bit different. They can bring whatever their project is, but wow. I'm not kidding, especially towards the end of the year, I had so many students being sent into the library and it was just very chaotic. And as I already mentioned, chaotic is not something I do very well with. So that is definitely one of the bad things. All right, now let's move on to the ugly. The first one is something that you have to talk about when you are a teacher, and that is student behaviors. And I don't just mean the talking. The talking you can deal with. It's not behavior in the same sense that some of these other things are. I just feel like, again, since COVID, there has been a definite spike in student behaviors. They are very physical with each other. They are very mean to each other. They like snip at each other all the time. They poke at each other, and they poke particularly at the students that they know will give them a reaction. There was just a lot of ugliness going on between these students. It stems from having a lack of recess time, a lack of playtime in the younger ages, and teachers are not adequately prepared to address all of the social emotional needs of their students. That's just the bare truth here. So I feel like the behaviors, while not as severe as I had last school year, because boy, did I have some last school year, it's still just something that I feel like the district is not addressing, and we don't have systems in place to support. Another ugly would be stressing about the little things that don't really matter in the long run, things like signage and things like that, which I just never got to this past year, but was always thinking about in my head. It's fine. We made it through the year without that stuff, so I really didn't need to be stressing so much about what I wasn't able to get done. So that's kind of what I mean by that. And the last one is a little bit more personal, but it's being afraid to ask for help. As someone going into a new building, you want to put your best foot forward. You don't want them to think that you don't know what you're doing, especially as someone like me who was transitioning from the classroom into a special area like the library. There were a lot of adjustments, and I feel like I did a good job adjusting, but there were definitely times where I could have spoken up or used things at my disposal. And I'm gonna go back to the buddy room thing. I rarely sent students out of the library. First of all, I have a very large space, much bigger than most of the specialists aside from like the PE teacher. So I kind of would move the student who was causing the problem just kind of off to the side. So I feel like I just wasn't as willing to get support as some of the other people or specialists, teachers, whatever were. And that was something that definitely impacted me. I don't know, I have this thing where I don't want to be like the one who calls the office and the secretary's like, her again, because that definitely happens, y'all. So I just felt like I could have gotten more support at times than I necessarily did. That being said, when I did ask for help with behaviors or whatever, they were very responsive, very helpful. So I just need to not be afraid to ask for help. And I feel like I was this year, which is why I'm putting it under the ugly. All right, now I'm gonna move on to my next section, which is next year I will. So these are kind of like goals that I'm setting for myself in advance. So we will see. But next year I will make more use of my calm down spot and or buddy rooms. This ties into being afraid to ask for help. It is obviously not frowned upon to send students to other classrooms in this building, which is good to know. So I just need to be more willing to do that. And hopefully that will make things a little bit easier on myself. I feel like my calm down spot was not in a great place this year. So when I say make more use of it, I did use it, but it was not in a great spot. So I need to figure out where I can put it to really have it benefit the students. So that's something I'm thinking about in my head. Next year, I will also actually use the punch cards that I created and then did not touch to reward classroom behavior. So I had a punch card for each class, and I literally never used them, y'all. So my goal next year is to actually reward classes who have good behavior. So by that, I mean, if they fill up their punch card, they will probably get like a free choice time or class instead of having like the usual lesson or class structure. Still brainstorming, but I definitely want to actually make use of that. I created the cards and then did nothing with them. Next year, I will also stay up to date on overdue notices. I feel like I went through periods where I was really diligent about this, and then others where it fell by the wayside because there was so much other stuff going on. This includes messaging parents early on when we have an overdue as opposed to waiting until later. Some of my students did not get to check out at all last year since like the first month of school because they did not bring their books back. So I just want to be more diligent about reaching out to parents and letting them know, hey, your kid is missing this book. Can you please look around for it? But this also is going to tie into something else that I'm going to do, and this might be controversial, but I'm not going to allow students to take library books home next year. The reason for this is that they are allowed to take home their bookmobile books, and their teachers give them a bag of books to take home. So I feel like limiting my library books to school only is not detrimental. They will still have things to read, but I definitely lost a lot of books because students took them home and promptly misplaced them. I was able to get some of them back, but not enough. There were a lot of overdue books at the end of this year, so just have to do something a little bit different next year. Next year, I will also start the year off how I finished it this year. So, as someone who had to move into a new position, I obviously was changing things throughout the year to figure out what worked. By the end of this year, I felt like I had good systems and procedures in place that I want to start the new school year with, rather than trying a whole bunch of different things. I've kind of found what works, so I want to carry that over and start the year with those things in place, if that makes sense. That's what I mean by that. Next year, I will also have table seating charts ready to go from day one. This was hard last year because I didn't know the students. Now I know them, aside from like new incoming pre-K and kindergarten, and I can be more strategic about my seating charts. So I want to have those in place and ready to go for day one. And next year I will also organize the activities in the STEM/STEAM area that the students use for choice time to make cleanup easier. I am a type A type person. So my goal is to create labels for the bin, the lid, and the shelf of where I want stuff to go. I just think that's going to make cleanup a lot easier. The biggest problem this past year was that the lids would get all over the place. Because I have like multiple different styles of bins, they don't fit on all of the different bins. So that was causing confusion. So I think just labeling everything will make me happy and also help the students when it comes time to clean up. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end this video off with my #1 goal for next year. And this is not a student-centered goal, y'all. This is a me-centered goal. And the goal is that I'm going to get the signage up in the library this year. That means labeling the shelves for authors' last names. For nonfiction, it means putting pictures up to show the students what type of books are in each section. It means labeling things like the dinosaur books or the princess books. I want to have more bins to put the series books in that the students gravitated towards this year. Things like Pete the Cat, the Mo Willems books, which I had small bins for last year, but they weren't big enough. So I found my bigger book bins that I had in my classroom, and I'm gonna transition everything over to those. I also want to make a point of really showcasing new books or books that I feel like aren't getting noticed, and hopefully get their circulation numbers up a little bit. So that is my goal, signage. It's gonna help the students because they are little, and it's going to help me just feel like things are put more together. This includes the labels that I mentioned for the STEM area, and just overall really getting good with the library organization side of things. So that's my goal for next year. We'll see if I can manage it. I should be able to, but you know, you never know what the year is gonna hold for you. All right, so that is it. that is my reflection on the 2023-24 school year. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please leave me a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to my channel if you would like to see more from me, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, everyone.